All right. Okay, folks, I know folks are still trickling in, but I wanted to get going with our presentation today. Thank you very much for being on time. My name is Mac Farrell. I'm a senior project manager on NYSERDA's large-scale resources team, and I'll be guiding you through this presentation today. This is the 2025 Tier 1 Solicitation Proposers webinar. And without further ado, I think we will get into it. Can I have the next slide, please? I did want to go over just a little bit of housekeeping. For attendees today, all participants will be muted for the duration of the webinar. Just some technical notes. If you would like to use the Q&A feature during the event, you certainly should avail yourself of the opportunity to ask questions throughout, but please do so using the Slido feature. The way you do that is by clicking on the three dots on the lower right corner of the screen. You select that Slido option to open the feature, and that will allow you to communicate your questions to us. Today's slides will be posted on the CES webpage following the webinar's conclusion. And that'll be at the link shown here. That's the nyserda.ny.gov, et cetera, et cetera. If any technical difficulties arise that cannot be fixed via the Q&A feature, please reach out to our colleague Sal, who is on the call today, and can be reached at the email address on the screen, sal.graven. I also want to point out that the NYSERDA team will try to address Q&As that aren't covered today at the Q&A session at the end. We will try to address those on the solicitation website for 2025. That is the Axion portal. So please keep an eye out on the Q&A tab on the website. Let's have the next slide, please. All right. So for today's agenda, we'd like to cover several topics. Those include important updates on the 2025 Renewable Energy Standard solicitation. We are going to provide an overview of the solicitation process, including the price and non-price components of the evaluation, and key aspects of the agreement, the standard form agreement. Lastly, we'll briefly review the systems that are supporting this RFP and note how and where to register as a proposer and register your facility should you wish to participate in the 2025 RFP. We'll also be joined today by my colleagues shown here to overview some key components of the RFP. But first, before we begin in earnest, I would like to invite our Vice President of Large Scale Resources, George Sassine, to say a few words and get us kicked off today. So I'll hand it off to you, George. Can we have the next slide?
Thank you, Mac, and good afternoon, everybody. Very happy to have all of you join us today. I just want to provide a quick high-level introduction before the team dives into the details of the rules of this RFP. To announce the launch of this RFP, Governor Hochul last Friday issued a press release, which I hope you read in detail. I think we've measured every word in there to be very precise. And the governor announced two major initiatives, two sets of actions that are complementary to each other. And the goal is to accelerate the deployment and construction of clean energy across New York State in a way that would help stabilize energy prices. And the rationale behind the governor's announcement is the recognition that there's a near-term need for electricity to respond to the increase in electricity demand, as well as the increase in the economic development needs for the state of New York, but also highlighting the importance of adapting to shifting federal policies. And because of that, Governor Hochul not only launched this Tier 1 solicitation, but she also directed all New York State agencies to work together to responsibly advance shovel-ready renewable energy projects as quickly as possible. And again, launching both the Tier 1 RFP in conjunction with the directive to state agencies to work with all of you is really designed to support New York ratepayers and make sure that we take advantage and capture as many of the federal clean energy tax credits as possible to bring down costs. So the topic of affordability remains a key priority for us as we launch this Tier 1 RFP. And again, just to spend a little bit of time on the directive from the governor to focus on projects that may qualify for existing federal tax credits, the goal is really to launch a whole of government approach that's going to responsibly streamline permitting, interconnection, financing, contracting processes to ensure that as many projects as possible reach construction quickly and provide clean power to New York homes and businesses. So with that background and that context, we're launching this Tier 1 RFP. And this year's solicitation is really designed to advance late stage large-scale renewable projects that are ready to commence construction in the coming months and years. And what we've done in this RFP is incorporate best practices and lessons learned from prior procurements, and also balancing and being responsive to the Public Service Commission 2024 Clean Energy Standard Biannual Review. So we've attempted to put these two elements together in designing this RFP. And with regards to the best practices, which the LSR team is going to walk you through, through this webinar in more details, I do want to highlight at a high level that we've incorporated best practices and lessons learned from prior procurements that include several provisions, including component cost indexing that we've evolved, labor provisions, stakeholder engagement requirements, disadvantaged community commitments, and agricultural land preservation. And also a priority for us is to expedite contracting. Because of that, NYSERDA has also streamlined the bid requirements to enable expedited contracting as well. So that brings me to the topic of schedule. We're setting a very ambitious schedule with this RFP because we want to move fast and support you and support as many projects to move as fast as possible to qualify for the federal tax credits. So we have step 1 applications due in 3 weeks from today. But we also intend to manage and execute a very efficient solicitation in order for us to be able to notify conditional awardees in February of 2026. And again, all of this geared to helping all of you that would be awarded to keep pace to achieving the key milestones to meet in the federal tax credit rules in 2026 and after that. So with that being said, we're very proud, very excited to have launched this RFP. We're very thankful for your interest, and the team is going to walk you through all the details that you need to clarify the rules for this RFP, which are final. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Abby DeRocker to walk you through some high-level items.
Thanks, George. Next slide, please. So as George has highlighted, we are proceeding with this procurement as a demonstration of our steadfast commitment to cleaning New York's grid. This is the 9th solicitation under the Renewable Energy Standard and reflects our unwavering commitment to clean energy initiatives. Currently, we maintain an operating portfolio exceeding 1.4 gigawatts. This is supplemented by 6.5 gigs of projects in various stages of development, including over 1 gigawatt of projects that are actively in construction throughout the state. that's in large part thanks to folks like you and, you know, the ecosystem we've developed, including our Tier 1 administration and settlements teams, along with collaborative efforts from our origination team to bring, you know, valuable experience in facilitating the project development process to this industry. And we are fully prepared to assist projects in overcoming challenges and navigating the complexities they may encounter as they strive to achieve their key development milestones. We are proactively addressing issues and enhancing our support for projects working through LNTP, partial MOB, final investment decision, NTP, or full MOB, depending, you know, wherever you are, in conjunction with other state agencies. This takes, you know, a lot of work because we have to understand the complexities of each project, and the Tier 1 team acknowledges that each project necessitates a unique array of local, county, state, and federal approvals to attain these milestones. So, you know, consequently, we are seeking more comprehensive information from our development partners than we have in previous solicitations. Those familiar with this process will note that our Step 1 application requests additional details compared to prior solicitations, and the team can get into the details of that later. But, you know, it's really important for us to gain insight into your project development plans so we can help potentially smooth the path to development. Be aware of challenges, bottlenecks, areas requiring expedited attention, and to more fully understand your project and who will be responsible for final approvals and permits. All this information will allow and empower NYSERDA to work collaboratively with the other state agencies to address any project-related issues as they arise. We, as you all know, face a very critical window to move these projects to construction with federal tax incentives intact. So, you know, we're all doing this. Our work has the goal of providing a clean energy transition to New York ratepayers. You have my commitment that we will work earnestly to support projects in the development process with all of our sister agencies, all in an effort to support the New York ratepayer by using sunsetting federal tax credits to bring down costs. Thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of the webinar. I'm going to pass it back to Mac.
Thank you, Abby. Let's get the next slide. And the next one. All right. So I'd like to remind everyone of our anticipated schedule and also some of the interim deadlines that are part of the 2025 RFP. As many will know, in this solicitation, it is bifurcated into two steps, the Step 1 eligibility application and the Step 2 bid proposal. Bidders who are deemed eligible under the Step 1 eligibility application will be invited to submit a Step 2 bid proposal. Let's go to the next slide. And I wanted to lay out some of our specific upcoming dates, but just wanted to note, prior to submitting a Step 1 eligibility application, proposers should ensure that they have registered their facility in NYGATS, the New York Generation Attribute Tracking System. One moment. If you have registered, or if your PSOQ is over 2 years old, we request that your registrations be submitted by October 9th, which is 1 week from today. Registering in NYGATS will ensure that the facility is eligible to create Tier 1 RECs and therefore participate in a Tier 1 RFP. We'll provide more instructions on registering your facility as Tier 1 eligible a little later in this session, near the end. But looking forward after October 9th, the first major deadline of the RFP is the Step 1 eligibility application due date, which is due October 21st. That is a Tuesday. Following that, we currently plan to issue notices of qualification to issue notices of qualification to bid into step 2 on October 30th. And then we will open step 2 that very same day. The step 2 bid deadline is currently set for December 4th. And we will expand on the step 2 requirements throughout this presentation. But this is the bid proposal. This is what serves as the basis for evaluation for all bid facilities. So please note also that bid fees are due, and they're due the day before of the step 2 bid deadline. So bid fees are due on December 3rd. Just noting that NYSERDA may also reach out to proposers following the receipt of bids to ask any clarifying questions that are needed. We may request an interview with the proposer to ask more extensive questions prior to making awards, and clarifying questions and interviews will be sent and scheduled basically throughout December and January while NYSERDA completes the bid evaluation for this year. And I'm sure everyone's curious, but NYSERDA will seek to notify proposers of provisional awards in February of next year, February 2026. And as George said, we are trying to move very quickly. This is a somewhat expedited schedule, but these are the highlights. Next slide, please. Okay. Next, I want to detail some of the important notes and newer items that have been incorporated into the 2025 RFP. Before I get too deep into that, I did want to note for the attendees that our team realized a section number in section 4 of the RFP was not included in the released version from last Friday. We have corrected this and updated the RFP document. And as of this presentation, you should see a corrected RFP. This is not a dramatic revision, but if you download the RFP before this presentation, I'd like to request that you do so again and rely on the latest version, which has the correct section numbering in section 4. All right, getting into it here. First, I'd like to call your attention to the alternate bid proposal options that are available this year. The alternate nameplate capacity option remains the same as in the past. This allows bidders to submit multiple bid capacities if they're considering multiple project configurations. The component cost indices adjustment, CCIA, this is a new alternate bid proposal, but it is replacing last year's inflation risk adjustment proposal, the IRAP mechanism. The change is that it's introducing new indices to better capture cost changes over time, and we will look a little closer at that later. Finally, we're reintroducing the option to bid with co-located energy storage as part of the bid proposal. And for more details on each of these options, please see section 2.5 in the RFP. In keeping with the spirit of the New York State Public Service Law 66-R, the Buy American Act, NYSERDA will again require awarded bid facilities to source a portion of the steel that's used to construct the facility from domestic U.S. sources, and that's measured on a dollar per megawatt basis. These dollar per megawatt bases are $33,000 per megawatt DC for solar, 61,000 megawatts AC for wind, and 64,000 per megawatt AC for hydro. The next item, attendees may have read that the in the May 15th, 2025 biennial review order that NYSERDA was authorized to expand the maximum allowable contract tenor for Tier 1 solicitation awards to 25 years, up from 20. However, I did want to note that NYSERDA and DPS staff have determined to offer a 20-year contract tenor under RFP 2025, though I will note that this may be revised in future solicitations. Next slide, please. Okay, I wanted to touch on interconnection. The interconnection minimum threshold has been adjusted for the solicitation. That is that is in keeping with the Commission's May 15th order, which requires that bid facilities must have completed an interconnection agreement with NYSO if interconnecting under the old interconnection rules, or satisfied the NYSO's requirements for entry into phase 2 of the cluster study, including payment of all necessary deposits, if pursuing through the 2024 cluster study. If any projects are interconnecting from adjacent control areas like PJM or ISO New England, we would accept equivalent progress with the interconnection process for that interconnection authority. Moving to permitting viability. The permitting viability minimum threshold has also been updated for this solicitation and now requires submission of a permitting plan, as well as an on-site wetland and water body screening, for which NYSERDA has provided guidance in Appendix 3. For agricultural lands, agricultural and forested lands, we also wanted to point out that the Smart Solar Siting Scorecard has been reworked this year based on the recommendations of the Agricultural Technical Working Group, the ATWIG. And NYSERDA has also introduced the Agricultural Co-Utilization Plan, and that's just in lieu of the Agricultural Mitigation Payment Deferral Request Form, but we'll share more detail on that later. Next slide, please. Okay. In keeping with the Commission's May 15th order, the portfolio risk factors for this RFP have been expanded as well. And I'd ask you to see section 6.2 for additional details on that. A new non-price evaluation category has been introduced this year, project maturity. This category will evaluate projects based on the reasonableness of the timeline for securing permits and approvals, such that the proposed commercial operation date can be achieved. A little more on that later as well. Finally, I'll just round it out with some updates to economic benefits. Please note that contributions to the NYPA Renewable Energy Access and Community Help Program, the REACH program, will be allowable as incremental economic benefit claims to disadvantaged communities in this solicitation. You can see Appendix 4 for additional details and links to enroll in the REACH program with NYPA. And that brings us to the end of our new and notable items for the moment. Can we have the next slide, please? I just wanted to further detail a little bit more on the requirements for each submission step. As we implied before, really the primary requirement for step 1 is having a Tier 1 eligibility certification, either a provisional statement of qualification, a PSOQ, that's for projects under development, or a statement of qualification, an SOQ, that's for currently operating projects. Please note that projects looking to bid incremental generation as part of an upgrade or repowering proposal will be required to receive a PSOQ even if the facility is currently operating and generating Tier 1 or even non-Tier 1 RECs. Only projects that are currently operating and wish to qualify the full output of the facility as Tier 1 should request a statement of qualification to qualify for step 1. Proposers are also asked to state their expected REC settlement preference, either a fixed or an index REC structure in step 1. And I also wanted to point out that this year we are requiring bidders to include a completed attachment F minimum thresholds narrative form as part of step 1, which will then need to be updated and resubmitted as part of step 2 if any progress towards the minimum thresholds has changed. And I mostly wanted to call attention to the new attachment H tax credit and permitting data form. This is basically what Abby Duracker was speaking about, in which we are asking all bidders to complete a series of questions about tax credit status and permitting expectations for informational purposes. This is to inform our understanding of the tax credit viability and permitting feasibility our bidders are experiencing in the face of recent federal changes. Finally, for step 1, proposers are required to complete the Executive Order 16 vendor responsibility certification forms. The EO16 form prohibits state agencies and authorities from contracting with businesses conducting business in Russia. And the vendor responsibility certification form requires NYSERDA only to do business with responsible entities, so it lays out a series of questions from the NYSERDA vendor responsibility checklist. Both of these can be downloaded and then re-uploaded on the solicitation website through Axion. Following the review of Step 1 eligibility applications, NYSERDA intends to respond with a notice of qualification, like I noted before, to all eligible proposers. That would be on October 30th, after which proposers will have until the 4th of December to prepare and submit their final bid proposal documents, which will be detailed further this hour. That notice of qualification document, it will include instructions on how to submit a bid through the solicitation website, and it'll also detail where to access all the required files and other pertinent information, including each eligible facility's maximum contract tenor. The Step 2 bid proposal will require proposers to upload their binding bid proposal submission, which will include their pricing information, economic benefits information if applicable, and the associated documents and information required to assess project viability and operational flexibility, and evidence of meeting all of the RFP's minimum threshold requirements. Documents for the Step 2 submission are already available, so proposers can start preparing those in advance of the notice of qualification if desired. They're available both on our website and on the Axion solicitation website. I will note one thing this year, that the bid price itself, which previously had been submitted in attachment D in recent RFPs, will be moved to the bid form, the Axion form, for Step 2. So just making folks aware of that so it doesn't come as a surprise. Next slide, please. And the next one. Okay. We'll have to cover a few basics on eligibility of Tier 1 resources. Eligible bid facilities must adhere to the technologies and fuels listed above on the screen. They must be located in the NYCA, the New York control area, or an adjacent control area, and they must supply energy into New York State. They must have first commenced commercial operation on or after January 1st of 2015, or produced new incremental energy in Tier 1 RECs from a new bid capacity above a historical baseline. Please note that acceptance of a Tier 1 award cannot be conditioned on the withdrawal or the acceptance of any other bid proposals. Next slide, please. And for existing bid facilities, that includes repowers, upgrades, and return to service projects, we encourage you to closely read the full RFP to determine aspects of eligibility like maximum contract tenor, but specifically see section 2.2. And please reach out to NYSERDA at our res@nyserda.ny.gov email address with any questions on eligibility for existing bid facilities really as soon as possible. Additionally, please note that the Tier 1 eligibility certification guidelines for 2025 have been revised to include additional verification for the generally accepted accounting principles, the GAAP requirements for repowering projects. And I believe Marcy will talk a little bit more about that later. Next slide, please. All right, I did want to get into ineligibility. Please note that for any project that was the subject of an award under NYSERDA's 2022 RFP, 2023 RFP, or 2024 Tier 1 RFP, any project that was subject to an award under those 3 RFPs is not eligible to bid under this RFP. This includes previously awarded projects that failed to execute NYSERDA's agreement for an award in 22, 23, or 24. However, this prohibition does not apply to projects whose awards were subsequently rescinded or projects subsequently found to be ineligible for award in those solicitations. Additionally, projects that are seeking or have secured funding through a separate NYSERDA incentive program like New York Sun, New York NYSERDA funding for geothermal facilities. These projects are not eligible to participate under this RFP. For 2025, bid facilities are permitted to seek a NYSERDA Tier 1 REC agreement and funding under NYSERDA's Agrivoltaics Research and Demonstration Program. But please note that Tier 1 RECs that are already committed to either NYSERDA itself or any other entity pursuant to an existing award or contract, those RECs are not eligible to be counted for award in the 2025 RFP. Therefore, a bid proposal in RFP 2025 should not include any encumbered Tier 1 RECs in the bid quantity or the bid quantity percentage. Those are basically the two metrics that statement impacts: bid quantity and bid quantity percentage. To hammer it home, just an example, a bid proposal with a bid quantity percentage of 100% should have 100% of the Tier 1 RECs to be produced by the bid facility free and unencumbered for purposes of sale to NYSERDA during the entire contract delivery term of the NYSERDA Tier 1 REC purchase and sale agreement. As a further example, if the RECs associated with 25% of the output of a bid facility are encumbered Tier 1 RECs, then the bid quantity percentage of that bid facility should be no more than 75%. All right, that's it for that slide. Let's go to the next one, please. Okay, the amended and restated mutual termination agreement. I am going to hand it over to my colleague Beata for this one, and take it away.
All right, thanks very much, Mac. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to issue a quick reminder for bid facilities that do still have contract security with us pursuant to the amended and restated mutual termination agreement. So we're maintaining the same approach as we did in the prior solicitation. So at a very high level, I'm not going to read everything here, but just kind of at a very high level restate that for bid facilities with a mutual termination agreement, we are not going to draw on contract security held under this agreement until we reach the threshold point, which is a pre-established but confidential amount of generation associated with bid facilities under contract. At the moment that the threshold point is reached, then we would draw on the contract security of facilities that have not been awarded at that time. This would not apply to bid facilities that were ineligible in that solicitation. But the point I would like to drive home here is that if you are eligible, you must participate in the first solicitation that you are eligible for. So if you're eligible to participate in 2025 and you have an amended and amended and restated mutually termination agreement, then you need to submit a bid into that solicitation. And then also, if you are awarded a contract in this solicitation, noting again that any subsequent contract security that you deposit pursuant to this solicitation would be added to the contract security that we already hold under the ARMTA. So both of those would then constitute contract security under the subsequent agreement. Next slide, please.
I think it's back to me. All right. So I did want to talk a little bit about bid price structure and evaluation. Just reiterating, the price component will be 70% of the total evaluation of each bid, while the non-price component will comprise 30%. The 70% of each bid's final valuation score is determined by converting each bid price, that's either a fixed REC price or an index REC strike price, into a levelized net REC cost, or an LNERC. For proposers electing to submit a fixed price REC bid, the process and structure are the same as in past RES solicitations, where each megawatt hour of eligible generation delivered for end use in New York State would be compensated with a fixed price per REC. That's for the duration of the contract tenor. It gets a little more complicated with an index rec, which will be based on a reference zonal energy price. That's based on the NYSO zone in which the project is directly interconnecting or delivering its energy. And it is critical that developers understand and confirm with the NYSO and their interconnecting transmission system operator or utility which zone the project will be interconnecting into as they advance their project and prepare for the RFP. For the strike price itself will be set over the life of the contract. Monthly revenues under the REC contract will vary, though, based on the monthly zonal energy and capacity prices, as we'll detail on the next slide. We'd like to remind everyone that regardless of whether the proposer intends to bid a fixed REC bid or an index REC bid, that all bids should reflect all costs needed for full energy deliverability, including any necessary upgrades or interconnection schema required to ensure the facility's generation can be delivered to the grid. Next slide, please. Okay, so we covered that we would accept both fixed and index rec bids. As discussed, we'll convert those into LNERCs. But I did want to note that all priced bids will be evaluated head-to-head in real dollars based on the project's contract tenor. Index rec LNERCs will be calculated based on NYSERDA's long-term forecast of zonal energy and capacity prices, which will not be publicly disclosed. These zones will be determined by the NYSO zone where the project is located and interconnecting, and for external facilities determined by the proposer selected NYSO zone where the project will be injecting energy. One thing to note, this was the same last year, but seller selected UCAP production factors are no longer collected to determine the reference capacity price for this solicitation. Instead, a capacity accreditation factor, a CAF, which is detailed in section 5.1.2 of the RFP or 4.01 of the agreement. The CAF will fill this role, and the reference capacity price will be used both for evaluation, converting the strike price and the UCAP factors to an LNERC, and will be used for settlement of the monthly index rec through the contract tenor. The lowest price LNERC will receive the full 70 price points, with higher LNERCs receiving fewer price points. While this was a brief overview, we do remain available for questions today on this webinar and for any written questions following the webinar regarding index rec structure. I'd also like to recommend that all interested parties review section 5 of the RFP, which is related to price, bidding, evaluation components of the LNERC for the RFP. Next slide, please. I did want to just cover this. The slide shows the formula that will be used to calculate monthly payments to future sellers under index rec contracts. This is meant to be a simplified refresher or introduction as to how these payments will be calculated. The reference energy price is just a simple average of the month's hourly day-ahead market location-based marginal price, LBMP. As a reminder to all, one moment. Yes, sorry, as a reminder, this is the day-ahead market zonal price and not the generator or reference bus price available from the NYSO for the reference energy price. For reference capacity price, this will be calculated monthly as well. It's based on the monthly ICAP spot market auction price, while the strike price will remain constant again. Both the reference prices will vary month to month, resulting in variable payments to sellers with index rec agreements. So again, this is meant to provide protection for ratepayers against volatility in utility bills and for project developers against volatility in project revenues. Next slide, please. All right, I wanted to touch on the CCIA briefly since this is a new or updated mechanism. So in light of heightened inflationary and market pressures, NYSERDA has elected to again allow proposers to submit an alternate bid proposal that addresses these pressures. This year it's the Component Cost Indices Adjustment, the CCIA. This alternate bid proposal would subject the proposer's index or fixed rec price to a one-time adjustment to reflect changes to a predetermined set of price indices. These price indices have been determined by NYSERDA to capture the major cost components of various Tier 1 technologies. The index rec strike price or fixed rec price would be adjusted to reflect changes in predetermined prices or indices between the bid proposal submission deadline and the date of full notice to proceed, FNTP, with construction. Please note that this adjustment will be subject to a 12% cap and also a 12% floor. NYSERDA will publish the final Index B value that will be used in the agreement prior to the bid proposal submission deadline. I'll just note that for more details on what I just said, please see section 5.2.1 of the RFP for the actual formulas and a little more description. However, this next point is important. NYSERDA is interested in proposer feedback on two elements of the CCIA, which we're soliciting during the Step 1 eligibility applications. Proposers will see that there are optional questions asking for input on whether FNTP is a suitable milestone for the index T value in the CCIA formulas. And for solar PV bidders, you'll see a question seeking feedback on a more suitable solar PV module index. This question is in light of the recent suspension of an EIA database that NYSERDA had planned to rely on for this formula. We would appreciate your feedback on these questions and note that they may be able to be incorporated into the CCIA formula for this solicitation. Proposers should note that a CCIA bid can result in either an increased or a decreased bid price, depending on how the indices play out. All right, next up, can we have the next slide, please? I will touch very briefly on qualifying governmental support. Just wanted to call your attention to a new component of the 2025 solicitation, which we're calling qualifying governmental support. In this case, for all proposals, the index strike price or fixed rec price will be adjusted to account for any qualifying governmental support event that arises from a statute enacted after the Step 2 bid proposal and received by the awarded project. For more information on this and to see the actual formula by which this adjustment will be made, please see section 5.3 of the RFP and section 5.05 of the agreement. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to get into our non-price components and evaluation. The components of NYSERDA's project viability category and evaluation are shown here, along with our partners whom we may work with as part of the evaluation process. Thank you very much to all our partners. I think let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so the project viability thresholds for each subcategory are shown on this slide, and that's along with the associated documentation that they'll require, and that's shown on the right-hand side. All these requirements and the associated documentation are detailed much more comprehensively in that section 4 of the RFP. As outlined in the CES order and subsequent implementation plans, our project viability thresholds have gradually been expanded to value more mature and responsibly developed projects, which is why some of the minimum thresholds are again higher in this year's solicitation compared to past RFPs. However, I wanted to call your attention to some changes to certain thresholds in following slides. This is basically a cheat sheet for the requirements that are going to be evaluated for this RFP. But I did want to note on the next slide, please, that we have a series of minimum threshold only subcategories. And so these categories will not be evaluated for a non-price score, but we do require these submissions as a minimum threshold for the complete view of the bid. In this particular category, I just wanted to note that NYSERDA plans to publish all of the Attachment B public release of bid facility information and community engagement plan documents. Yes, that title is one document. This document combines the Attachment B public bid facility information document from previous years. It combines it with the community engagement plan requirement into one more streamlined and uniform document. The expectations for this document are fully detailed in the RFP. All right, so now I'll go a little more in depth on some of the evaluation categories. Can we have the next slide, please? I wanted to touch on interconnection. I'm using the wording from the RFP here. I think there have been some questions on interconnection, the interconnection requirement, which we will get into in the Q&A section. But I just wanted to note that we basically have a twofold, or I should say a two-pronged requirement this year. This will require, again, a valid submitted interconnection request with NYSO or the interconnecting control area, but also a completed interconnection agreement if you're pursuing the old interconnection rules, or the bidder needs to demonstrate that they have satisfied NYSO's requirements for entry into phase 2 of the cluster study, if you are pursuing the cluster study approach. I think we will probably have a little more on that later. Let's go to the next slide for permitting viability. The minimum threshold for permitting viability has been somewhat loosened this year. The requirement is no longer to demonstrate that the key permit has been obtained, but rather it is to submit a permitting plan that demonstrates a realistic path to successful permitting of the project. This is akin to what was requested in the 2022 RFP, but it has been significantly updated, so we do recommend proposers refamiliarize themselves with the permitting plan appendix. This year, proposers must also complete an on-site wetland and water body screening that was set out in Appendix 3. And that has been up on our website for some time, but we do want to make sure folks get a good look at that. That is the Appendix 3 NYSERDA guidance for wetland and stream screenings for large-scale renewable energy projects, which is now a required submission as part of permitting viability. Let's move to the next slide, please. All right, energy deliverability. This category has not changed, but I just wanted to touch on it for participants. NYSERDA will conduct an assessment basically on the back end of receiving bids that accounts, excuse me. I think I got my talking points mixed up, but basically energy deliverability will be an evaluation based on the benefits that are afforded to the grid, the electrical grid, in terms of relieving grid congestion and avoiding delivery constraints, and to the extent to which a proposer can demonstrate that their project is helping and not hurting in those regards, NYSERDA will run a study to assign a score to that project. Let's go to the next slide, please. Peak coincidence. We just want to briefly touch on this. For this category, we'll be comparing each bid facility's generation profile to the incremental renewable generation needed to attain a 70% renewable grid in 2030, whereby projects that generate during hours with less incremental contribution to 2030's expected hourly and seasonal load will receive a better score. Projects that better serve these shortfalls to load will be scored favorably in evaluation. Next slide, please. All right, agricultural and forested land. Folks, I am going to take a break and hand it over to Abby Randall to cover our agricultural and forested land. But Abby, when you're ready, take it away.
Sure, thank you, Mac. So as Mac mentioned earlier, we did have some changes to the scorecard, particularly around agricultural and forested land avoidance methodology and agriculture minimization strategies. So under the 2025 RFP, proposers of solar bid facilities will once again be required to submit a completed smart solar siting scorecard workbook. The scorecard's verified scores will be used in evaluation, including any co-utilization commitments that the proposer makes at the time of the bid submission. We'll detail this further in a moment, but I want to reiterate that projects that avoid siting on the state's highest quality agricultural land, which is designated as mineral soil groups 1 through 4, active agricultural land and forested land are eligible to receive more points in this category. We realize that full avoidance may not be possible for some proposed projects, which is why projects can be favorably evaluated in such cases if committing to co-utilization measures or electing to implement other optional minimization strategies. Please note that the inclusion this year of a requirement for most solar proposers to complete the Exhibit 4 in-field verification checklist to assess and confirm the extent of forested lands within the bid facility's facility area. Bid facilities that have a submitted application to ORES, including Exhibits 11 and 15, can base the relevant avoidance flowchart data inputs on these exhibits and do not need to complete the Exhibit 4 in-field verification. Next slide. Great. So I also wanted to call the attention of solar bidders this year to the availability of a GIS layer from SUNY Climate and Applied Forestry Research Institute, so CAFRE. This can be provided to projects that are submitting these details to better identify forested lands in their facility area. So this year, solar bidders have the option to bound the facility area for their projects with north, south, east, and west coordinates to create a square around their facility area in the Step 1 eligibility application. We call this a bounding box. If bidders populate and submit these coordinates, they will receive a GIS layer detailing forested lands in their facility area, with which they can better complete the Smart Solar Siting scorecard. We strongly encourage proposers to take advantage of this feature in Step 1 in order to better complete the forested lands protection component of the Smart Solar Siting scorecard, which is seen above for reference. If proposers do not take advantage of this feature in Step 1, then CAFRE will populate the score and score forested lands component in Step 2, seen above, without the proposer's input. So next slide. Okay, and accompanying the RESRFP25-1 is Appendix 6, the Agricultural Co-Utilization Plan Requirements and Guidance. This simple flowchart is taken from that appendix document, and as with prior RESRFPs, a proposer that has the option to signal to the TEP within its Step 2 submission its intent to implement agricultural co-utilization to potentially defer and offset its ag mitigation payment. If the proposer optionally submits the draft ACUP with its bid proposal, such inclusions will be preferentially evaluated. However, this sets the expectation that if awarded and contracted, the proposer would continue through the flowchart steps of submitting a pre-commercial operation ACUP prior to construction for NYSERDA's review and acceptance, then a post-commercial operation ACUP with the operational certification request, and once operating, submit annual reports to a final report after the 5th year following commercial operation. And more details on this process can be found in section 4.3.4 and appendix 6 of the RFP. And for the avoidance of doubt, the ag mitigation deferral option still remains for contracted projects, even if they don't submit a draft ACUP with their Step 2 proposal. And I will pass it back to Mac.
Thank you very much, Abby. All right, can we have the next slide? I think we're looking for project development. Great. Okay. For this year, I did want to note the project development category has been separated from the financing and creditworthiness category for evaluation. In past years, they had been combined. In the project development finance, they've been combined in the project development financing and creditworthiness subcategory, but no more. we've broken them apart. I wanted to make a note of one of the main changes for project development, which is that the percentage thresholds for similar scale projects and demonstrating that you've built them, they have actually been decreased somewhat, with a project of at least 33% of the proposed bid facility, if it is not been interconnected at the same with the same interconnecting authority, or a project of at least 10% of the proposed bid capacity if it has. And so those are lower than last year by approximately 20% each. Otherwise, this requirement remains largely unchanged. Let's go to financing and creditworthiness. Okay. The financing and creditworthiness category in and of itself remains largely the same. But a series of financial documents are requested this year in addition to the financing plan. And this will be in order to evaluate the credit rating of the proposer or its equity partners, as well as key credit ratios like FFO to debt, debt to EBITDA, and EBITDA to interest. So just keep an eye out that there is some more documentation requested if available for for the proposer or for their equity partners. Next slide, please. Okay, getting to this project maturity category that is introduced this year. As mentioned before, this is a sub-criterion that is going to be a part of the 20% project viability and operational flexibility category for 2025. And under this non-price scoring criteria, projects will be scored based on really how soon they're able to reach commercial operation. And so that means projects with near estimated commercial operation dates would score better, but that needs to be substantiated. And this is a new evaluation sub-criterion. It is one that has been used, although this is a new evaluation sub-criterion for Tier 1, it is one that has been used in prior large-scale renewable solicitations for offshore wind. So we're bringing this concept over to the 2025 RFP. Next slide, please. Okay, I also want to talk about energy storage. We've not had energy storage for a few years, and I just wanted to go over some of the basics. I won't go line by line here, but I just wanted to note that this is for co-located energy storage only, not separately located energy storage as it was back in 2022. The energy storage component will only be awarded under the energy storage component can be entered in the ISC solicitation or the Tier 1 RFP, but the energy storage component will only be awarded under one of the two competitive solicitations. Just wanted to bring this up. If a proposer is awarded a contract for RECs or for ISCs, and they provided a bid proposal for the same bid facility in both RFPs, the proposer must withdraw its bid proposal from the non-awarded RFP. You cannot wait and see which ones get awarded. For example, if a co-located storage facility is awarded an ISC contract under ISC RFP25-1, the proposer must withdraw any corresponding alternate co-located storage bid proposal submitted to the 2025 Tier 1 RFP. Alternatively, if a co-located storage facility is awarded a REC contract under the 2025 Tier 1 RFP, then the proposer must withdraw the corresponding energy storage project submitted to the ISC RFP. The base bid proposal, we ask you all to submit base bid proposals in addition to your alternates. That one will then continue to participate in the 2025 Tier 1 RFP. So the bid itself is not completely ineligible. It's just that the storage component would be. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to try and move a little bit quicker here. Just note that in attachment D, in order to further assess the impact of recent federal tax, trade policies, and market conditions on large-scale renewable projects. We're intaking additional information on project costs, project components, and financing structures from bidders in attachment D. This information is being collected to inform our review of the 2025 bid proposals and to better assess their viability. You'll see that the attachment D bid data form contains a part VI tab. I believe last year this was VII. And this is basically a expanded set of fields intaking project data, a little bit larger than last year. Next slide, please. Okay. I wanted to cover incremental economic benefits. This is the second non-price component of the bid evaluation. This comprises 10% of the overall score, and it's derived from the economic benefits packages that are submitted by the bidder. This submission will be required in the form that's, excuse me, I don't think that next line is correct. So I'm skipping ahead. All right, these claims are eligible to be included as of the first CES RFP launch date. That was all the way back in June 2nd, 2017. And we encourage proposers to think about near-term ways to reach out to communities in proactive ways. And a fuller list of eligible expenditures is listed in the RFP itself. And I will note that this year that is in Appendix 4. The incremental economic benefits details have been separated from the main body of the RFP and published in a separate Appendix 4. One little nuance, alternate bids for the same bid facility may be submitted with differing economic benefits packages. For example, bid proposals may be submitted with and without economic development commitments if different bid price or strike prices are warranted. Interested proposers may reach out to Empire State Development at the link on the screen here if they want to seek any additional resources on how they can partner with local industries or other economic development projects, or if they have interest in what nascent opportunities may already be underway in their region of the state. Just wanted to reiterate that economic benefits, or excuse me, wanted to state for the first time, economic benefits realized in disadvantaged communities will be evaluated more favorably than other economic benefits during the evaluation, but it will be incumbent on the proposer to identify which economic benefits are associated with a disadvantaged community, if applicable, such as components of a pilot program or hiring practices employed by a developer or its EPC. Let's go to the next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit more about disadvantaged communities. We ask all proposers, or we tell all proposers, you must identify the expected benefits and burdens that will be borne by disadvantaged communities to the greatest extent possible as part of your bid proposals. However, while the Climate Action Council continues to evaluate and address how these benefits and burdens should be explicitly defined and tracked under the Climate Act, the Tier 1 program is still seeking to direct tangible benefits to disadvantaged communities as part of project development. I already noted that disadvantaged community commitments will receive preferentially greater weighting and evaluation. This is a very busy slide. I think the main thing I want to call people's attention to is really the last line. In order to aid in your assignment and calculation of disadvantaged community claims, we are including a link to the the Climate Action Council's Disadvantaged Communities Reporting Data Collection Template. That is what's linked at that last line on the slide. This has a DAC percentage tab in which you can find the disadvantaged community makeup of cities, towns, counties, and I believe census blocks throughout New York State. We are hoping that bidders will find this to be a useful tool and allow them to more accurately predict the disadvantaged community makeup of the economic benefits claims that they make in 2025. If you have any questions about that, please let us know. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but just if you circle back to this deck, please note that we are strongly encouraging proposers to coordinate with state or local organizations, including trade organizations, to explore the feasibility of partnering with local communities to employ residents for short and long-term roles. And some of these organizations and resources are provided here. So please take advantage of these links if you so choose. Okay, that takes us to post-award process and standard form agreement. Can we have the next slide, please? And the next. And I believe I'm going to hand it off to Beata again. Thank you,
Thank you,
Beata.
Mac. So yes, post-award process. So if you receive an initial award notification, you are still required to adhere to the terms of the non-disclosure agreement that you enter into with NYSERDA as part of the bidding process. So that means that the awarded proposer is required not to distribute any press releases or contact the media, other members of the public, until after we have made an announcement that all agreements have been executed in that particular solicitation. You will be required to deposit further contract security with us, or rather, I guess the initial tranche of contract security with us within 30 days of the award notification date, and the amount of contract security required would be the product of the bid capacity and $20,000. There will be documents required pursuant to Section 7.3 of the RFP that the seller will need to provide prior to contract execution. So please do take a close look at that section. And in terms of finalization, we will be providing you with a conformed draft of the agreement after receipt of provisional award, and you'll be required to execute this agreement within 120 calendar days following the date on which we provided the draft. And failure to do so would mean that contract security, the initial tranche deposited, would be forfeited to NYSERDA, the award would be rescinded, and that bid facility might not be eligible to participate in further solicitations. So it's very important to be proactive and expedite the contracting process upon receipt of an award. Next slide, please. Okay, so there have been a number of changes made to the standard form agreement issued with this solicitation. So proposers are strongly encouraged to review the standard form agreement in detail and to consult with an attorney prior to submitting such a proposal. We've highlighted here a number of sections, noteworthy sections to which either changes have been made or new provisions have been introduced. So I do highly recommend that you review the sections posted on the slide here. The deadline to provide us with any proposed material changes to the terms of the standard agreement is October 21st, 2025. Please note that NYSERDA does not intend to entertain any material changes to the agreement after October 21st. I would also ask that you please use the SFA comment template provided as attachment M in making any recommended changes. So please don't send us like a marked up version of the SFA. Please do use the template provided. And further information on material changes can be found in section 8.1 of the RFP. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly highlight a couple of noteworthy sections that were mentioned on the prior slide. So the first thing to note is that the commercial operation milestone date is November 30th, 2030. And in contrast to prior years, incremental contract security payments they'll still be required, however, not to extend the COMD date, but rather to demonstrate continuous project development progress. And these milestone payments can be replaced by evidence of having entered into an interconnection agreement or with demonstration of full mobilization of construction. So please take a closer look at Section 15. Also new to Section 15 is an explicit ability to extend the COMD. We may grant a request from the seller for such an extension past the November 30th, 2030 COMD, where the seller has demonstrated that they meet prescribed circumstances for such extension. So please do take a closer look. The changes in law section, we've built that out further since 2024. So this further details the process for sellers to claim in NYSERDA to address a change in law. Material adverse change, or MAC, is a new addition to Section 18 of the agreement, and it covers material adverse changes to permitting, federal tariffs, and/or federal tax policy prior to the commercial operation date. Next slide, please. And I wanted to actually note one thing about the MAC, which is that where circumstances for the MAC are met and the agreement is terminated, under such circumstances, 90% of contract security would be returnable to the seller. However, please do note that that would not encompass contract security that is held under a mutual termination agreement, which would be forfeit to NYSERDA. The next change that we've introduced is a minimum delivery requirement. So we've introduced a 65% of bid quantity minimum delivery requirement, failure of which to meet would constitute an event of default under the agreement. We've also introduced a requirement for the bid facility to be operated in accordance with prudent industry practices. Again, failure of which to meet would constitute an event of default. We have a new qualifying governmental support provision, which includes a formula to adjust the bid price in the event of any governmental financial support being obtained through a new statute passed after the bid price submission date. There's also an other remedies section. So in circumstances where the seller is ineligible for an extension of the COMD under Section 15, and upon an event of default caused by the seller's failure to achieve the commercial operation milestone date, NYSERDA may, as an alternative to terminating the agreement, so basically what this means is that NYSERDA may truncate the contract delivery term. So that's what unilaterally determine that the contract delivery term commences on the COMD, despite not having achieved the COMD. That is what that means. And that's detailed in agreement section 1405. Next slide, please.
All right. With that, I think we're handing it over to Marcy. Marcy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mac.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I will be providing a brief overview of registering and submission of eligible Tier 1 technology applications using the New York State Generation Attribute Tracking System. As Mac previously mentioned, as a first step, you will need an approved NIGATS account to register and then apply for Tier 1 eligibility. If you do not have an account, please register as soon as possible. The account needs to be approved prior to registering projects. Typically, it takes 2 days for the NIGATS administrator to respond to new registration requests. Next slide, please. A provisional project is a type of project for generators that are not yet operational. Provisional project registration will be auto-approved, and once approved, you may apply for Tier 1 certification. After review, and if project is deemed to be eligible, a provisional statement of qualification, PSOQ, will be issued. An operational project is a type of project registration for generators that are currently operating. The project must be in an approved project status to submit for Tier 1 certification. After review, and if project is deemed to be eligible, a statement of qualification, SOQ, will be issued. Both operational and provisional projects can be submitted to NYSERDA for RES certification using the Apply for Operation Eligibility or Apply for Provisional Eligibility links in NIGATS. In order to submit a project for RES certification, the project needs to be registered in the project management module and set to an approved status. You will then receive an email notification once it's reviewed and completed, and then you log back into NYGAS to view the determination and download a copy of the PSOQ or SOQ. Next slide, please. As a reminder, and was mentioned earlier, NYSERDA is requesting that any bid facilities that are not yet in operation and have a PSOQ that is over 2 years old to please resubmit a Tier 1 certification request by October 9th to NYGAS for verification. The date of the PSOQ can be determined by referencing the issuance date noted in the eligibility field in NYGAS. If you are still determining the final bid capacity, please apply for the largest potential capacity in your PSOQ. Downsize if needed when submitting Step 1 application or Step 2 proposal. For repowers, the repowering must have the result that 80% of the net book value, the facility's original cost minus the accumulated depreciation per the generally accepted accounting principles from the completed repower facility, not including its property and intangible assets, is derived from capital expenditures made on or after October 15, 2020. The applicant will submit a valuation identifying the total cost of the as-completed project and the disposed equipment value. An independent agreed upon procedure, attestation report, or similar level of audit will be verified and requested at time of the SOQ application. It is not required for the provisional certification. For specific information regarding imports, please see Section 5.2 of the New York State CES Tier 1 Certification Eligibility Guidelines, linked in the RFP. All import projects must first apply for provisional eligibility and provide a sample tag. If requesting a transfer of provisional projects from one account to another in NYGAS, please email lsrops@nyserda.ny.gov as soon as possible to complete a transfer form. The transfer form must be signed by both original and new account holders. Thank you, and I will pass back to Mac Farrell to review next steps.
Okay. Can we have the next slide, please? All right, we are getting to the end here. And basically, we reviewed these dates earlier, but I did just want to go over again some of the key upcoming dates for proposers to be aware of, especially if anyone missed it in the beginning. Any changes to the schedule will be communicated well in advance to proposers. And just rounding this up again, the RFP was released last Friday. The deadline to submit, or our requested deadline to submit any PSOQ or SOQ registrations is Thursday, October 9th. That is 1 week from now. The Step 1 eligibility application is due Tuesday, October 21st. Step 2 is due December 4th, with that bid fee due the day before. And we intend to turn around award notifications by February of 2026. That is the rundown of the schedule. Let's go to the next slide, please, which is our last. Okay, so we have reserved a few minutes here. Looks like we've got about 10 left for folks to submit written questions through the Q&A function, which I'll review in just a second. And for our team to do our best shot at answering these questions. I will note that if we don't get to your question today, and it does not necessarily mean that we are not answering it, we will do our best to try and provide written responses to the questions we receive on the Q&A feature in Axion, the solicitation portal of Axion. Could we go up to the intro slide for one moment, which I believe is slide 2, getting started, and just give folks who may have arrived a little later a reminder of how to access the Slido function. If you would like to submit questions to us, please use the basically the three dots that you see on the screen, and the Slido polling and Q&A function. And we have been receiving questions, but we're happy to receive more. I might actually leave this up on the screen for a little bit. With that, I will leave some space for questions to be opened by my team. We might have a little bit of downtime here until 2:30, and our answers will come a little sporadically as we get them prepped. But let me stop talking for a moment and ask my team if we have anything we'd like to field at the moment.
Thanks, Mac. I can, thanks for the folks that submitted some during the webinar. I can go over a few of these. So we did get a few questions related to interconnection and the threshold in the RFP. So let me try to address a few of these. So for projects that are proceeding through the interconnection process under the NYSO's prior interconnection rules, so this includes those projects that completed the 2024 class year, it's our intent that those proposers that have been tendered an interconnection agreement and are in the process of negotiating it with NYSO and the subject utilities are eligible for evaluation and award under this solicitation. So recognizing some understandable confusion around completing an interconnection agreement, this team will ensure that what I just said is clearly communicated in writing and or via a revision to the RFP. But just to be clear, projects that completed the class year and are in the process of negotiating an interconnection agreement are intended to be eligible under this RFP. Now switching over to projects being studied under the revised NYSO interconnection process and are participating in the 2024 transitional cluster study, just confirming that projects to be eligible for evaluation and award must have proceeded to phase 2 of the cluster study by the time of the step 2 bid proposal submission, not the step 1 submission. We recognize that our milestone dates are surrounding some upcoming NYSO milestone dates, but just confirming that by December 4th is when we will be asking for that evidence of those subject projects have proceeded to phase 2. Moving on to a few other eligibility related questions. Received a question if a project is tier 1 eligible and registered and commercially online, presumably operating if they are eligible. And the answer is yes. Projects that are tier 1 certified in NIGATS and are operating are eligible to participate in this RFP, subject to achievement of the other requirements that Mac and the team laid out today. For operating projects, many of the requirements related to under development projects do not apply, for which there is additional information in the RFP itself. Let's see. We did receive a question on if participating projects must have full capacity deliverability in addition to energy deliverability. We'll state that projects are not required to have full capacity deliverability rights. This program does not compel capacity market performance. However, for proposers or projects that would be subject to, be advised that the reference price that Mac overviewed earlier will still include a reference capacity price, regardless of the capacity rights of the subject project. All right, let's see. Mac, can I kick it back to you? And I'll see if I can address a few of these ones coming at the end here in a few.
Sure. Give me one moment. Okay.
Just while you're getting set up, Mac, seeing a question about what happens if the transitional cluster study is further delayed. NYSERDA is monitoring the cluster study schedule and will communicate any date changes out to participating proposers.
Okay. If we Don't know if anyone else from the team. I was going to take a stab at one here. Let me make sure I have this right. A question came in that asks, are federally recognized tribal nations and states recognize, are federally recognized tribal nations and state recognized tribal nations in New York considered to be disadvantaged communities in the solicitation and by NYSERDA? At the moment, I would say the New York State's Climate Justice Working Group voted to include members of both state and federally recognized indigenous nations within the disadvantaged communities criteria by automatically including census tracts with greater than or equal to 5% of federally designated reservation territory or state recognized owned land as disadvantaged communities, regardless of their scoring on the 45 indicators within the criteria. So NYSERDA recognizes the Climate Justice Working Group's criteria for meeting a disadvantaged community, which includes these federally and state recognized census tracts. And I hope that was helpful. If it was not, please feel free to submit a follow-up question. I know we are coming close to time here. Forgive the lull. We are still juggling.
Yeah. I can take a couple more briefly about energy storage. One question about settlement and how the settlement mechanism under the index rec contract will work for co-located solar and storage projects. So the settlement process that Mac laid out will remain the same. So these, as far as payment goes, the reference capacity price will be generated the same way. It's more so that the metering configuration will need to be properly installed, both reviewed by NYSERDA and installed by the seller to ensure that tier 1 RECs and energy generated and injected to the grid in tier 1 RECs can be properly tracked depending on the interconnection type of the co-located energy storage system. So there is no special or discrete settlement mechanism for how the index rec contract is settled. It's more so we need to just ensure that we are properly tracking the RECs created by the project. And another energy storage question about the bulk storage program manual, and just confirming for folks that may have missed it that NYSERDA did issue a revised bulk energy storage program manual that's applicable to our new bulk storage program earlier this year. Those requirements will also be subject to any co-located energy storage projects that receive a tier 1 REC award. And so they will be required to undergo that NYSERDA-led process, which is a bit more involved than the prior bulk storage program. So we just recommend that folks review that in advance of submitting a bid if submitting co-located energy storage projects.
Thank you, Bram. Unless we have any last quick ones, that does bring us to time. And so I believe I'm going to wrap us up. Thank you very much all for attending today and sitting through another proposers webinar for 2025. We hope this was helpful, but we know there will be questions. Please feel free to reach out to us again through the Q&A or the messaging feature on the Axion portal. For more information on the RFP, you could follow the link on the screen, and soon we will have the slides from today's presentation posted on that solicitation website. With that, thank you very much to my team and to everyone who attended today. We look forward to working through this solicitation with you. And that is all that we've got. Thank you so much.